you cannot beat the internet on volume. So you have to beat it on quality, and you have to beat it on clarity, and you have to beat it on perspective, because those are three things that you actually can win on. You don't have to have volume to be able to do that. You just need to be able to hone your skills. So that's where I put a lot of that effort as well. When I'm doing proposals, like this is another example. This is another Claude project, one of these AI assistants that I developed. We have a template that we put in all of our proposals into. And what I do is I basically uploaded it, and then I have the transcript of a sales call that I do with a client and upload that. And I ask it, there's like 12 sections or whatever in our proposals. Which ones should we keep and which ones don't we use? And then for each one that we keep, I want you to take the generic template boilerplate text that I have in there, and I want you to rewrite it based on the pain points that were surfaced during this call. I hate to say how much better it is at that than I am. And not only is it better, it takes seconds. I'll be like, how come I never wrote like this?
Mike's got the hat, the AI kind. Unlocking power in business you'll find. Cut through the hype, explore the tech. Every week, new ideas to check. All 10 leads us on a digital quest. AI secrets he'll always invest. Tune in tight, don't miss a beat. Knowledge groove, keep you on your feet. Listen up to the AI flow. Business growth, here we go. Cutting edge insights, that's the plan. With the AI hat, you'll understand.
Greetings, program. Welcome to the AI Hat Podcast, the resource for established solopreneurs who are ready to stop being the bottleneck in their own business. Each week, we architect the simple AI operational systems that eliminate admin drag and reclaim your time, bringing you to focus on the high-value work that truly scales your revenue. I'm your host, Mike Alton. Subscribe, and let's build your empire together. Now, listen, friends, how many times have you told yourself something like this, that a podcast will only take an hour to record, or that client proposal, just 30 minutes, right? Here's the uncomfortable truth every solopreneur needs to face. You're lying to yourself about how long things actually take. And that lie is keeping you trapped in operator mode instead of scaling to owner mode. The problem isn't that you're bad at time management. It's that you've never truly measured what your workflows actually require. That's where today's guest comes in with a revelation that changed everything about how he runs his business. Rich Brooks discovered that his 1 hour podcast actually consumed 3 full hours of his time. But instead of throwing in the towel, he used AI to map every minute of that process and create systems that handle the heavy lifting. As the founder of Flyte New Media and host of the Agents of Change digital marketing podcast with over 600 episodes, Rich has mastered the art of turning time-intensive processes into AI-powered efficiency machines. He's the perfect guide to help you stop underestimating your workflows and start building systems that actually scale. Hey, Rich, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. Great introduction. I know people always say that when they come on after they've given you their own bios, and they're like, oh my God, I didn't know. But actually, I didn't have anything to do with that bio at all. And so thank you, because that made me sound much smarter than I am.
Well, I appreciate that. And in full transparency, when people do say that, and I love hearing that, there's 2 parts to that. There's a delivery, which is important. But the text, I tell people very transparently, say, Claude wrote that about you. I took the stuff that you gave me, I feed it into my podcast showrunner, and Claude says, cool, this is the stuff I know about Rich. Let's make him sound fantastic.
Good job, Claude.
Yeah, so let's talk about your revelation, because you discovered that your 1 hour podcast actually takes 3 full hours. Walk us through that revelation. What were you missing, like in your original calculation?
Well, so I'm the boss of Flyte New Media. So I don't do as much I used to do all this client facing work. Now I don't. Now I have a team that does most of that work for me. I'm in charge of biz dev and sales and that sort of stuff and creating content. So in my mind, I was like, yeah, if I have Mike on my show and we do a 30-minute interview and maybe there's that 15-minute pre-interview show we do where we kind of flesh out the topic. And then I kind of prep the files for my team. My investment is an hour. And then earlier this year, we were trying to get a better understanding of where our time as a team was being spent. And so in the past, we only asked our team to log the hours where they were actually doing billable or productive work. But now we said, we really want you just for a few weeks to track everything. And I will also, even though it doesn't matter, I will also track my own time. And that's when I started to see the truth of where my time was actually going, that I was spending, even I had already like in my mind, streamlined the process, but I was spending so much time between prepping the interview and the questions and then going through and editing things and just all the work when all was said and done and getting things over. It was on average over 3 hours every single week that I was spending on this. And there was actually a time in my life where I was running 2 podcasts. So that was probably close to 5 or 6 hours a week of my time. And really, I can't afford to do that. I love doing my podcast, but it's generated business for Flyte in the past, but it's not the number one thing we do to get new business. So it was really, what do I do about this? Is this something I can still do? Do I need to cut down, maybe only produce it every other week or something so that I can get the rest of my work done? It was definitely eye-opening.
Yeah, I share that pain. I've shared this story before, I think, on the show, where at the outset of 2024, I had one show, one podcast for Agorapulse where I was working full time. And the CEO came to me and said, Mike, you're a great interviewer. I think you're doing great work. I'd like you to add 2 more podcasts. And I was already thinking, I knew I was spending a lot of time preparing for the first show's guests and episodes and interviews. These were starting as live video interviews, broadcast to social media, and then we were turning them into a podcast. And adding 2 more seemed just incomprehensible to me. And the idea wasn't to do just 2. The idea was actually to do 4 more podcasts, just starting with 2. So by May or June, I had 5 podcasts and shows with Agorapulse. Plus, I launched this one. So for a hot moment there, I had 6 podcasts. And I was spending at least 2 hours just on the prep for every episode. And so, yeah, figuring that out, finding the systems, were absolutely critical. But I want folks listening to understand this particular episode isn't necessarily just about podcasting. Because I want to know, Rich, how that time tracking experiment actually kind of changed the way you approached all of your projects at your business.
Well, I think it was kind of eye-opening for everybody on my team in terms of just seeing where their time was spent. A lot of times we think that it's like, oh, I spent this much time working on an SEO project for a client, or I spent this much time writing the copy for a website or whatever it is. And what you're not paying attention to when you're just blocking out that one task is that, but you had like all these back and forths with the client. And then you also had the weekly status meeting with the client. And then you also, every time you stop to answer that question, you're losing time there. And then there's the staff meetings where you have to report on what's going on. And I think we don't realize how much time we're investing in all these different tasks. So it's a little bit it's almost like when you're trying to lose weight and you start counting every calorie. Sometimes it's just about becoming aware of the time that you're spending on this. So yeah, I mean, podcast for me was the big one, but there's other places where it's like, I used to think, oh, I spend about an hour probably putting together a proposal. And it turns out, well, yeah, an hour writing and sending out the proposal, but you also weren't including that 45-minute meeting and then going over your notes and then doing follow-up questions and then talking to your team and getting some answers about whether it was WooCommerce or whether we should try some different solution, and all that back and forth until you finally put together the proposal and sent it out. And that doesn't include the follow-up time because the prospects don't get back to you in a timely fashion, and getting on the phone and harassing them until they finally say yes, no, or I'm calling my lawyers for a cease and desist on you, Rich.
No, but that's so right. I love that analogy of weight loss. I am not a weight loss expert, but I have to imagine if you're not tracking your weight and your calorie intake on a daily basis, you're just never going to lose weight. And how would you even know if you were? So you have to be monitoring those things, and you've got to be monitoring your time. And for folks, if you're not quite sure how to do that, I'll drop a link in the show notes to an audit that you can download for free. It's a few pages. It'll walk you through how to start tracking your time and give you the actual places to track those time. Just a few days. Spend a few minutes every day jotting down some notes, what you're doing each day. That'll help you identify really quickly. Oh, wow. I'm spending 70% of my time on administrative junk that really should be delegated or automated or systematized. And one of the things I know you told me before we started talking, Rich, was how you are what I'm calling multiplying the content. You created like this engine to take your podcast content, or it really could be probably any kind of original source content, right? And break that down into multiple conversations. Talk to us about how you're doing that.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, maybe the best thing to do is start from the beginning, because that
please.
tool, that AI, in this case, Claude project, actually is the last thing that I touch. So a couple of things are about automations. So I use a text expander, but you can use any tool you want. Text expander basically just allows me to put in short codes for anything that I want to type. So for, one of my most common text expander tool is I always use XX before something. So is XX auth. So I don't know if you get any unrequested emails that come into your email box, Mike. I get a few.
No, never.
Often with the subject line, quick question. And so what I basically do is, because 99.99% of them, I don't ever want to hear from them in the first place, I just type in XX auth and that says, thank you, but please remove me from your mailing list. And so that one goes out. I have much longer ones as well. And so I get, you mentioned I have over 600 episodes now on the podcast. And when you get to that point, you start getting a lot of inquiries from wannabe guests and their podcast booking agents. And I get somewhere between 25 and 35 a week for one spot. And that doesn't include when I want to do solo shows or when I want to bring friends on who I just happen to have seen out there, or when I go out and I find somebody, I'm like, I really would love to bring you onto my podcast. So it's like a 1 out of 50 chance you're going to get on the show. I can't respond to everybody directly. So I use text expander to just basically, I think it's XX guest is the code that I use, and it expands into a very polite, friendly message that asks them to fill out a specific form on my website, which then goes to a VA. She vets everything for me. And out of all the ones that come in, maybe 2 or 3 a week, she knows my personality, my show, who might be a good guest. And then I go through that very smaller list to decide who comes on the show. And then I, ask them, would you come on for a 15-minute interview? And this is where I start to really integrate AI into the flow. So if I'm having you on my show, Mike, and obviously you and I are friends, but it's still a good idea for us to talk through what we're going to have on the show. So we get on a 15-minute interview. I use Zoom currently and Fathom, which is my favorite AI note taker. So we get on a conversation. We talk about whatever it's going to be about, probably something about AI. And we just have a nice conversation. I don't even have to take any notes anymore. Really, one of the greatest things for me on AI is not having to take notes, or the ability to take a different style of notes. So my notes is no longer what did Mike say, but what ideas did Mike spur in my mind that I want to jot down that we didn't actually talk about. So it's kind of almost this creative note taking. But now I have this Fathom recording, which with a click of a button, I get the transcript, and now I have that. So the first thing that I do is that saves me a lot of time is I used to spend a lot of time trying to come up with questions based on those conversations. I was, during those 15 minutes, really struggling to keep up and keep it conversational because I'm trying to jot down all these ideas and thoughts and notes. I no longer have to do that. I can free up my brain, just have a nice conversation with you, try and get to the meat of what we're talking about. And then I have a prompt. And again, going back to text expander, I think it's XX prompt, honestly, or so XX PQS for podcast questions. And what it does is it takes a look at our conversation and your area of expertise and puts together 10 questions, and not just any 10 questions. I have a style of questions that I like, including an introduction, like what's your origin story kind of thing. And then each question builds on another question, on another question, on another question, getting deeper and deeper and more detailed until finally there's a few finishing questions like, Mike, if somebody wanted to get started with AI automations today, what do you think the first step would be? So something along those lines. So I've trained it with this robust prompt, and now I have these questions. And admittedly, I'm not using those questions out of the gate, because even though that prompt includes links to my brand voice, Rich's voice, and so it sounds like me, it never really sounds like me to me. So I go through and I clean up, but that takes me 5 minutes rather than all the time that it used to take me. And then when we finally get on the call and we do the recording and it's, half hour of an interview or something like that, and I get that recording, that's where I really start to use the Claude project, which I call the Agents of Change podcast producer. Before we jump into that, I just wanted to kind of check in with you and see if you had any questions so far about that process.
No, that's fantastic. I love that you're using a text expander. I use it the same way. Like I shared with you the Google Doc, right, that had our run a show for today. So you could take a look at the questions in advance. Whenever you're sharing a Google Doc with somebody, there's an opportunity to insert a message. So I said to you in that message, hey, Rich, looking forward to our chat this week. Here's your pre-show document and all this kind of stuff. All that message in there, that's in a text expander because I'm doing that so many times. I'm winding down those shows at the Agora Pulse, but for a hot minute, I had 6 shows going on. A lot of them were weekly shows. I was interviewing, 8 to 10 people a week. So I was sending out 8 to 10 run of shows every single week. I had my entire Monday blocked out to do nothing but podcast prep for the rest of the week. So I made that into a text expander. I don't have to type that in. Saves me minutes. And those are the little kind of nuggets that I just love looking for, particularly again, as a solopreneur. I don't have a team I can delegate to. I'm it. The dogs are here in the room. They don't do anything. So I need to find those moments where I can. So I love what you're doing with this. Let's take it further. Tell me more about your podcast producer now inside of Claude.
Right. So that's really where a lot of the AI work is going on right now. So it actually solves a couple big problems. One is the time it takes to do these things, and we'll get into that. But I also want to say that I'm really into SEO. Like that's always been a cornerstone of my approach to business and my approach to marketing, as well as what we offer at Flyte. And it always frustrated me that our podcast never seemed to rank that well. A few exceptions to the rule, but in general, the podcasts themselves, the show notes, never did well. And I always offered a full transcript, which originally I'm like, well, this is great. So much content for Google to absorb. But my belief is that the reason they didn't rank well is because when people are talking, like I am right now, they're all over the place and they go off on tangents and they say things and then they retract them and they go in another one. And it's not really the straight through line, where if I sat down and wrote a blog post on this topic, I would be editing and re-editing and getting it really clear with headers and subheaders and all those sorts of things and organizing in the way that Google wants, as opposed to this kind of stream of consciousness you get from a lot of podcasts. So one of my goals was to start writing blog posts for each podcast, but I knew that there was no way I wanted to add to my work. And I also didn't want to give this off to a teammate and basically be paying them to do this either. So I decided that this was going to be a great use case for AI. I originally did this as a ChatGPT or custom GPT. What I have found, and maybe this is not as true anymore with ChatGPT 5, but no matter what custom GPT I did, if I required too much of it, it kept on stopping and asking me if I wanted to continue when it was running.
Oh.
Where I would give the same information, the same instructions, the same knowledge docs to Claude, and Claude would just run through it the whole way. And I liked Claude's writing better as well. So even though I use ChatGPT more often, there are certain things where I'm like, once I nail down what I think is going to be a really good AI assistant, I bring that over and I turn it into a Claude project. So basically what I do is I gave it a series of instructions, and I won't go into the boring details, but you are a podcast producer for the Agents of Change podcast. And I uploaded 3 docs. I uploaded a doc that was about the Agents of Change podcast to kind of give it some context. I uploaded a doc that taught it how to speak in my voice. And I also uploaded a buyer persona, who I believe the audience is. And all of that was because I wanted to ask the right kind of questions for the first one, but I also wanted to think about how to write these blog posts and the other things that I'm going to ask it to do. So those 3 knowledge doc goes up there, plus the instructions of exactly what I wanted to do. And so some of the things that I wanted it to do is I wanted to write an SEO optimize, search optimize title for this page. I wanted it to write the opening paragraph in my voice. Obviously we had the full transcript. I wanted it to find the best clips, like the bumper that I could use before, what is the best clip that possibly come out of this? And then I also wanted it to identify what the SEO keywords we should be going after this. So when it writes the blog post, I want you to integrate the blog post or the keywords into this blog post. I wanted it to write the social media post that would promote this show as well. What else do I have it to? The ID3 tags. So I wanted to write the ID3 tags for when you put the podcast up. And a couple other things. Oh, you would think that I would have nailed down the sign off in like episode 3, but I've never had a really good sign off for my show. And so I asked Claude, I'm like, I need a sign off for the show. I want every show to end with the words agents of change or agent of change. So it'd be something like, and if you implement your AI automation in this way, you'll truly become an agent of change. But I was like brain dead by the end of this. I'm like, I need you to give me my outro on this, but not just one. I want you to give me 5 different styles of outro. And one will be a contrarian approach, and one will be this, and one will be that. And so it gives me all of this in one fell swoop. So when I'm ready, it's Tuesday and I'm prepping the all the files and everything, I just take the Fathom transcript, I upload it, I don't even have to give it a prompt anymore. I just press the go button. Basically, it reads the instructions, it reads the knowledge docs, it reads the one document that I'm uploading. And basically in about 30 seconds, I have all of the post-production information I need. And the only real manual work I'm doing at this point is I take that blog post, I put it into another document, and I edit it. Because even though I've trained it, and even though it's quote unquote sounds like me, it doesn't. I mean, I don't know what your experience has been, but I'm super particular about my personal brand voice, and writing has always been one of my favorite things to do. So it's never where I want it to be, but it is so much faster for me. Like one of the things that always pisses me off is every single title that it gives ends in parentheses and how to fix it. Like what you're doing wrong with AI automations and how to fix it. I'm like, okay, once a year, maybe that's okay. 52 times a year, no. And so it also uses the word actually at least 7 times per blog post. So these are things that I fixed. Like once I realized like everything is actually, then I would say you're only allowed to use actually twice in the blog post, things like that. So you keep on iterating these to make it better. But yeah, get to the point, I read through and I make sure that it still sounds like me. And sometimes I don't like to take it, the take that it has. I'll sometimes push back and I'll say like, I want you to go again. This feels kind of negative, which is not my tone, or I think you're insulting the intelligence of the audience. So let's bring this up a bit. But generally it's just a matter of just making some small changes to it. And then that basically is everything I need to do. And at that point I have all the things. So basically I do a little bit of audio editing my own these days, pop that up. I use a company called Bear Value to do my post-production. So they get this. I send a couple things over to my team. So they post it up to the website. They send out the emails on my behalf, but all these things has all been basically streamlined by this Agents of Change podcast producer that's really just putting out content. And I've started to see anecdotally better SEO results because we've got that blog post up at the top too. It's hard to prove that it's just because of that. It's just like anecdotally and my belief on what's going on that we're starting to see that some of these more recent blog podcast show note pages are ranking higher at the search engines. And and then the last thing that I'm doing that I've started to add into it is so I have 3 AI tools that I probably couldn't live without. One is ChatGPT, although I mentioned I use Claude for this. The other is Fathom because I take terrible notes and I don't remember anything. And then the third one is Descript because it's just become the most powerful editing tool that I can think of. And I keep on getting rid of other pieces of software and moving over to Descript for this. And so what I do is I just take the video from Zoom and I pop that into Descript. And you probably are well aware of this. There's a clip feature. Sometimes I'll put in the keywords from the interview that I want to focus on. Sometimes I just let it choose its own. And it has templates that I've tweaked a little bit with the Agents of Change logo in the bottom. And usually it'll knock out 10, 30 seconds or less vertical clips for me with the dynamic captions, underneath or above the person's face with what they're saying. And it takes me about 5 minutes, maybe less, to choose a couple, tweak them if I need to, send those over to my team, and then those get into our social media calendar as well. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm finding that it does save me time. But what I always stress with people is my goal is not to save time. I know that it's a goal for a lot of people and a goal for a lot of your audience. That is a secondary concern for me. My
Yeah.
concern has always been, and hopefully will always be, can I use AI to create better outcomes? And that's what I keep on reminding my team about. I'm not looking for you to save time by using these tools. In fact, I see it as it's going to slow you down at the beginning because you need to invest some time, just like you would invest time in training up an intern or a new employee. But after a while, you're going to start to see these time gains. But what I really want you to focus on is, did it produce a better product than you could have done on your own? And that's really what my primary goal is whenever we put things out.
Oh my gosh, Rich, so much to unpack in what you just shared. Thank you. That was amazing. Love the process there. A couple of notes from my end. I was thinking as you were talking. First, I use Gemini, as I think you know. That's my primary LLM as opposed to ChatGPT. I've never had that error with ChatGPT, but I have experienced the same thing, which is that I use Gemini very strategically. I have an AI chief of staff that I'm talking to all day, every day long, but the writing just isn't great with Gemini. It's okay. It's good. If I'm, just shooting out an email or something like that, it's fine. But when it comes to content that's going to be published under my name, it's not anywhere near good enough. And I also turn to Claude then to help me spruce up those posts, weave in the things that I would normally say. Claude's just such a better writer. And I don't know why. It doesn't make a lot of sense because I have the exact same instructions for both. So I've tested them side by side. They have the same instructions, same knowledge files. Claude's better. So to level set for a second, for those of you listening who may be just a little bit lost in what we're talking about, you've got the major LLMs, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. With each one of those AI models, you have the option of customizing it. With ChatGPT, that's called a custom GPT. With Gemini, that's called a gem. With Claude, it's called a project. They look different, but functionally, they're all identical. You put in a name for your customization. You put instructions, which could be a sentence or multiple pages of text. That's up to you, what you want to do with it. And you can upload knowledge files, like Rich, you mentioned, uploading a voice document and a document about your podcast, giving it that background information. I have the same thing with my AI chief of staff. I have the same thing with my podcast showrunner. They're just custom versions of the AI that allow us to do things. So folks, if you've never built something like that, I'll put a link to a reference document in the show notes below. One of the just logistical questions I had for you, Rich, is as a podcaster, I too am publishing a show notes blog post, we'll call it, right, with a description of the podcast and then the full transcript. And like you, I've seen zero SEO impact. Is that now what you're doing? Only instead of a brief description, you've got the actual article and then the transcript
I'm leading
below
with the
that, or is
blog
it two
post,
different posts?
right? Yeah, I'm leading with the blog post, and then underneath that is the original transcript, and then underneath that is like the final show notes and links and stuff like that. And again, it depends on the show. One that did really well was I interviewed Tom Webster on how to grow your podcast.
Sure.
And maybe it was just the phrasing or whatever. That one seems to do especially well, but I have seen more of them start to come up that way. And then, this isn't part of the podcast per se, but it is in a way. So Friday mornings, and I just realized I need to take care of that. Friday mornings, what I do is I take that same blog post, I go over to LinkedIn, and I publish it as a LinkedIn newsletter. It takes me about an extra 5 minutes to get that out. The content's already there. The rough draft is by Claude. The polished draft is by me. I put it out there, and with zero promotional work, we have over 1,000 people signed up for that newsletter. Now, I don't have the stats from LinkedIn on how many people actually read the newsletter, but 1,000 plus people have signed up for it. And that was only in a couple of months. So it's just another way of getting your information out there. And, it takes a lot of energy to create a valuable piece of content. So I think one of AI's real strengths is creating these repurposed pieces of content that we can share in different places. So between the blog post and the show notes, but turning that into the LinkedIn webinar, turning that, the video into vertical clips that can be shared on social media, all of those things are happening because of AI. And obviously we're talking primarily about podcasts, but I'm seeing the same thing in almost everything I do. I'm putting the focus on creating a better product, because I know there's a lot of people out there trying to get stuff out there faster. That's not my vibe. I've been saying for years, you cannot beat the internet on volume. So you have to beat it on quality, and you have to beat it on clarity, and you have to beat it on perspective, because those are three things that you actually can win on. You don't have to have volume to be able to do that. You just need to be able to hone your skills. So that's where I put a lot of that effort as well. When I'm doing proposals, like this is another example. This is another Claude project, one of these AI assistants that I developed. We have a template that we put in all of our proposals into. And what I do is I basically uploaded it, and then I have the transcript of a sales call that I do with a client and upload that. And I ask it, there's like 12 sections or whatever in our proposals. Which ones should we keep and which ones don't we use? And then for each one that we keep, I want you to take the generic template boilerplate text that I have in there, and I want you to rewrite it based on the pain points that were surfaced during this call. And I hate to say how much better it is at that than I am. It's not only is it better, it takes seconds. I'll be like, how come I never wrote like this? I still think I'm a better writer. I put it in my own words, but it identifies and says, oh yeah, this is what they wanted to do. And this is why this particular thing, instead of just selling Google ads as like, it's when people want to buy, you want to talk about this thing over here. And I'm like, oh yeah, they brought that up. That's a great point. And putting it in there. So that's also been, again, better output, better outcome, rather than just trying to get it done more quickly. Although I will be honest, it definitely happens more quickly because I don't have to think about it. I just have to take a look at it and be like, yes, that works, or I need to tweak that, put that up there, and get those proposals out the door more quickly.
Oh my gosh. Yes. That's one of the things I've talked about in my AI Solopreneur OS community, that need, if you're doing any kind of client work at all, systematize that process so that you've got a proposal writer that's trained on your best proposals, that understands here, you're going to give it a transcript, and here's our business model. Here's the products or services that we offer, whatever it looks like for you. And that not only, like you said, it does a better job, frankly, it saves you time. It also ensures that it gets done in a timely manner. Because a lot of folks, if they're busy, they get off the 45-minute discovery call, then they're on to the next meeting and the next meeting and the next meeting. Before they know it, it's 2 days later, and they forgot to get back to the person they talked to a couple days ago, who has now probably moved on to a different vendor because they were in the mood to buy 3 days ago. So
Right.
love that tip.
And
love
you've
your
also
point about
forgotten,
go ahead.
I was going to say, and you've also forgotten so many of the details. If you just did 4 sales calls in 2 days, it was like, was that the person who was on WordPress or the person who was wanting to move from Squarespace, or did they want it? So because my memory is shot. So thank
Oh, yeah.
goodness we've got Fathom to remind us, and I can always go back and check the notes. And if I'm like, did they really say that? I can always go back to the original video, do the search, find it. Just fantastic tools that us old men have at our disposal now for our family
Right?
members.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, maybe they just mentioned as a brief aside, oh, and then we want to develop a membership too. Okay, if you're doing a website quote, that's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
That's not, oh yeah, okay, we'll just toss in a membership for free. Oh no, that might double the proposal.
Right.
And that's something you probably should have explored more on the call. But if you missed it, and then, that's, yeah, it's essential, I think, to have that. One of the things that I've loved doing is I'm now using Notion as kind of my headquarters for my whole business. And Notion has a web extension that will, if you're on any kind of video call at all, including StreamYard, where we're recording this, it prompts me, do you want to record this, Mike? And so I don't necessarily have to use Zoom or Google Meet. Maybe the client or whoever I'm meeting with had their own platform. I know Fathom's good because they can jump into all those as well, no matter what you're doing. But Notion's going to make sure that transcript goes straight into my business database. I can refer to it at any time. And I've started using it for actual client and consulting calls as well. So I record those conversations. And now those are basically case studies that I can use in blog posts and marketing material, that I had this conversation with a client and walked them through how to do something. The other thing that I wanted to just stress that you mentioned as an aside was the LinkedIn newsletter. Folks, if you're not doing a LinkedIn newsletter, but your audience is on LinkedIn, that should be your number one takeaway coming out of this call right now. I had for a while, I was doing a LinkedIn newsletter that was written by my AI chief of staff. I was transparent about it. I said, this is Clue, gave him a name. This is Clue's newsletter. and his perspectives on the last podcast interview. And I just had it trained. Here's the transcript. What do you think as an AI about this conversation about AI? So it's kind of an interesting angle, I thought. 2,500 people subscribed to that with zero promotion. And it was getting at least 10% were reading it every single week that I put that out. And it was just a matter of giving it the prompt, copying and pasting into LinkedIn, hitting go. Folks, you got to be doing that kind of stuff. We are talking with Rich Brooks about the various ways that he's incorporated AI and automation-powered systems to save his time and free him to focus on truly valuable work. And I've got a couple more questions that you aren't going to want to miss. But first, a quick word from our sponsor.
This episode of AI for Business Leaders, the AI Hat podcast, is brought to you by Magi. Tired of juggling multiple AI subscriptions and trying to figure out which tool to use and when? Magi simplifies AI for businesses by offering access to all the leading language models and image and video generators for one low price. With Magi, you can create custom instructions to personalize AI for every business need and use them across all LLMs, including ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and even DeepSeek. No more building custom GPTs or gems that are limited to just one platform. Magi also lets you create customized workspaces for your entire team, giving everyone in your organization access to the same AI assistants and tools and prompts. Ready to streamline your AI workflow and empower your team? Tap the link in the show notes to visit Magi today to learn more. And now, back to the rest of today's episode.
So, Rich, I want to go back to the whole voice question and dig a little bit more into how you're handling that process. I'm going to use a technical term that I learned from Molly Mahoney, and that is, how are you zhuzhing up your output so that it actually tries to match your voice? Is it just you put it in once, you see what comes out, and then you edit it, or how are you dealing with that?
It's funny because Brooke Sellis is my zhuzh person. That's who I
Oh.
wouldn't say I heard it from first, but she was the one where I'm like, oh, I could integrate that. So it starts with, giving it different examples of your writing. And as time goes on, I think you can basically train up like you have your chief of staff. I think you might want to have the Rich Brooks that writes email newsletters, the Rich Brooks that writes web pages, the Rich Brooks that does this. So it's interesting. I have different thoughts on this. I put in a bunch of stuff that I had written over the years, more of the recent stuff, as I think, obviously the more you write, the more evolved you become, and got it trained up. And it said a lot of things that I thought were like pretty spot on. And then I asked it to create basically a voice doc for me that I could use going forward. And then I read through the voice doc and I was concerned because it's accurate, but it's really just minimal. Like, I'm sure that in the whole world, there's tons of people, maybe 10, 15% of people would have a very similar voice doc that I do. And this is problematic to me because my voice, I feel, is unique to me. And so whenever I'm doing voice docs, or almost always when I'm doing voice docs, I also include examples of my writing as well. So yes, use the voice doc AI to get a better understanding of how Rich would write. But at the same time, I also want you to check these samples or these examples that Rich Brooks actually wrote, so you can kind of get more of a sense, because really the brand voice doc that AI creates for you is a map, and its maps are incredibly valuable. They help you get from place A to place B, but they're not a perfect representation of what it is like to travel between those 2 points. So I think that's a critical piece that a lot of people are missing when they're creating their voice docs, is still including examples of the voice. And actually, one example I have is I have been on the local NBC affiliates here in Maine on their evening news program called 207 for 17, 18 years. The show's been on for about 22 years, and I've been on for 17 or 18 of those years. The only person who's been there longer is one of the two hosts. And I think the reason why they have me back all the time is I literally write out the full question and answers I'm going to give on the air. So all they have to do is show up and read the questions, and they know exactly what my answers are going to be. And they've told me they love that. Like, I'm their easiest guest. And because when I got into AI, I'm like, I'm curious. It takes me about 3 hours to put together a 5-minute segment that I don't get paid for, but obviously great visibility in the local market. And then I can repurpose their videos and put them up online as well. But since I have all these scripts, I wonder if I could just get AI to do my job for me. So I created a custom GPT that would basically act as me, go out, do the research on whatever the subject was. And then I basically created the framework for the show. I uploaded a doc that said who 207's audience was, again, my brand voice. And then I included several scripts from previous episodes that I had written. And then I would say, this month's episode is going to be about how to recycle your electronics. And the first time I did this, I sent it out, it did the research, it came back, it gave me the questions. I was like, wow, this is pretty spot on. It was a little too long. There were a couple things I wouldn't have said, but again, rough draft, great. And then all of a sudden I got really nervous because I hadn't done the research myself. So what I ended up doing is opening up a new window and saying, this is some research that was done for me. Could you please go online and find out how much of it is accurate? Tell me, are things true and provable? Are they likely true but not provable, or are they false? And I ran that through Claude as well and Perplexity. And basically they came back and they were like, 90% of this is true and provable. 10% is likely true, but we can't prove it. And nothing was a falsehood. So that was good. And I went on TV and I basically did the bit. And afterwards, Rob turned to me and he said, Rich, that was a great segment. Actually, one of your best, which was absolutely disappointing to me on many levels, but also kind of like when your kid does better than you do. It's kind of like, okay, I guess this is the future. But it was funny. Of course, I did make some changes and it's trained on my stuff and all that sort of stuff. But that was a good example of, even with examples, the voice got better for sure. It's in terms of more accurate, but there were still things that it leaned too heavily on. And I think that's what I see sometimes in the writing. It leans too heavily into something like, I love using metaphors. So all of a sudden everything is a metaphor. So, try to pull that back. And another thing is when we were doing the brand voice doc for Flyte New Media, my agency, I had it vet a bunch of stuff that was written. And a lot of the stuff that was on the current website, which I'm currently rewriting, was written by an outside copywriter who I absolutely love. Didn't want to do the job because she likes my writing, but I'm like, just please help me out here. And she did it. There were so many aviation puns in there. And when I asked ChatGPT to vet it for me, it said, oh, well, you've got two, you really love using aviation metaphors. And I knew that when I rewrote everything, I didn't want as many in there. So I said, like on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is almost never and 10 is almost constantly, what would you give that score? And it said probably like a 7 or an 8. And I said, okay, I want you to dial that back. And I want it to be a 3 because I knew I didn't want as much aviation metaphors in there as were currently going on. And I think that that's something else. Like when you see what AI tells you about your own brand voice, if you don't feel they have it right, or if you want to maybe up it a little bit, think of it like an EQ and ask it what your rating is, and then ask it to change that in the final document if you want it to be more trustworthy or more funny, although I don't think AI can be funny, maybe more sarcastic, whatever it would be. And I find that I get some good results that way too.
That reminded me of Matthew McConaughey's character in Interstellar, who's often telling the AI-powered robots to dial down or dial up their humor or their transparency and so on. But it's a great example. I love your analogy of the map to the voice guide, because another way to look at it is it's great to have a map. If you want to, drive to St. Louis, you're probably going to need a map, right? But the map itself isn't going to get you here. You still have to do the driving,
right?
Flying, if you're going to fly, right? You can't get there with the map alone. The human's got to be part of it. It's something we talk about all the time on the show, how the human's got to be part of the loop. And my process is very similar to yours. I used to have my AI chief of staff. It knew that I love Star Wars, knew that I've even talked about Star Wars. But I had to dial that back because it was putting in that Star Wars metaphor and analogy and pun every other paragraph. I'm like, I do not drop Star Wars references like that. At least I don't think I do. No one's told me to do it that often. I don't think I do. So as we wrap up, Rich, I wonder if you could share for maybe kind of like you suggested earlier, the solopreneurs are drowning in these kinds of tasks that they think it's an hour, actually taking them 3 hours or more. Where do you think they should start with their AI integration?
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Mike, is the first thing to do is to do a self-evaluation. And for us, we use a tool called Tick to manage our time and to basically track our time so that we can do appropriate billing for our clients. But honestly, it could be a Word doc, it could be a sheet of paper, it could be a Post-it note, but literally everything you do write down the time it takes you to do it, and do that for, I would recommend a minimum of 2 weeks. It depends on your workflow. I mean, maybe some people could get that done in less time or in fewer days, but I think 2-week minimum gives you a better sense of really what you're running into. In fact, with my team, I said 2 weeks, and then I expanded it to 4 weeks to get better data. That's going to tell you where some of your time sucks are that you may not have been aware of. And then it comes down to, what are the things that I can outsource to AI with either losing quality or maybe even improving the quality of the output? And those would be the first 2 things that I would try and focus on.
Love that. I love that perspective that you've just added to what I'm telling people all the time, which think about basically how repetitive are your days? Can you pretty much accurately predict what your day tomorrow and next week is going to look like? Or does it feel like every day is different? Because the more different your days feel, the longer you need to spend writing down what you do every single day. Because if tomorrow's not the same as today, then you're going to have a different output. But then bucketize those things that you wrote down. What is driving revenue? What isn't driving revenue? What could be outsourced? What's like completely unimportant at all? That's going to give you such a great picture as to where you should start implementing some automation, some AI, some delegation. Rich, you've been absolutely amazing. This has been such a powerful interview. I know folks are going to reach out to you. They've got questions. They want to know how they can maybe even have them help you with what they're doing in their business when it comes to marketing and so on. Where should they go?
Where should they go? Well, if they like podcasts, they should check out the Agents of Change podcast. I'm guessing they do if they're checking out your show. If they want to connect with me, I am the Rich Brooks on almost every social platform, but you'll find me hanging out most often on LinkedIn. And then also, if you are interested in working with a digital agency to take your business to the next level, they can check out takeflyte.com, which is FLYTE.com. But you know what? Just start with me. Find me on LinkedIn. Let's start a conversation.
Do that. Find Rich on LinkedIn. I'll have the link in the show notes. I'll also put Rich's podcast down there and his other links, all the resources we talked about today. Definitely follow Rich. He's fantastic. We've known each other for years. And I will tell you also, folks listening, if you're not quite sure where you're at with your business, if you feel like you're really struggling with the direction of your business, I've got a resource that's kind of a AI-powered coach that'll walk you through how you should be thinking about your business. It's kind of like building a business plan, but it's not that static document that you're going to put on a shelf. This becomes a really dynamic AI-powered blueprint, frankly, for your business and how you can move forward in the coming year. I'll have a link to that below in the show notes below, but it's just the aihat.com/blueprint. That's free. You can walk yourself through that and get some AI-powered coaching for your business. Check it out, and I'll see you on our next episode. Welcome to the grid.
That's a wrap on another episode of the AI Hat Podcast. I hope you gained some valuable insights and actionable strategies to boost your business with AI. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. And don't forget to visit theaihat.com for more resources and to connect with me. Until next time, keep innovating, and remember, the future of business is human and it's powered by AI.